when you're growing up in that early teen years and you don't really have a lot of friends and you're trying to make your way in a new area. You're finding something to do. So I locked myself in a room and learned how to play guitar.
You just heard Joe Peters. Joe was born and raised in Bakersfield, California, and was very active in family businesses and the oil and gas industry prior to purchasing Americal Awning. In addition to being very busy with that new venture, he spends all of his free time with his band, one of his true passions. In today's show, we talk about Americal Awning and letting employees take charge, his viral TikTok video that got 1 million views, and then playing over 200 shows during the year 2020 and 2021 in spite of COVID. And lastly, be sure to stay tuned to hear Joe talking about the events that changed his life. It's a great show today. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to the Our 2 Cents podcast, the show where your local professionals sit down with an array of guests to hear their story and impart some wisdom for both business and life-improving skills. This is your place to hear business and community leaders discuss relevant topics that matter to you.
And welcome to the show today. I am John Duffield, CPA, along with Shannon Eckroth of Eckroth Marketing, and we're your hosts today. Before we get into today's episode, I would like to encourage our followers to join our newsletter. That can be done via our website, which can be found at our2centspodcast.com. It is a great way to stay connected and up to date on our new releases.
Who's that guy doing 80 and a 55? Spinning his wheels on a road.
So, Joe Peters, glad to have you in today. How are you doing?
Yes, I'm wonderful. Thank you for having me in. I really appreciate it.
Excited to have you here. So you're the new owner of Americal Awning and then a very, very active musician. Tell me about those. First of all, start with Americal Awning. Tell us about that part and how's that going?
Thank you again for having me on. And Americal Awning has been something that's very new to me. The whole industry in and of itself is something that's very new. I spent the last 14 years working in the oil field industry.
Okay.
Primarily. Took a brief stint in real estate as well, and that all kind of culminated into my last 3 or 4 years working simultaneously alongside my father, Brad Peters. And as the oil market started to kind of decrease in California, it kind of left me internally thinking, okay, we got to do something here. I think for the rest of my dad's life and probably for the rest of my life, there's probably not going to be a huge change in the oil fields. I mean, it definitely could. I mean, we're seeing it trend that way for sure. But I do feel that my kids and my kids' kids are going to not be in the oil fields in California like the way we were. And so it left me kind of feeling that I needed to get involved in something outside of that market, something completely different. And I felt it was a good time because if we weren't thinking long-term here, by the time it came around, we had to get involved in something. Everybody would be getting involved in it. And so it made sense for me to start looking. And Americal Awning kind of came to me through a friend of mine, Steve Williams, who a couple years ago had told me about a friend of his, Scott Burid, who had a rental property for sale. And that was my first interactions with Scott, and finding out that he had Americal Awning at that point, not really knowing what it was, and he had kind of explained it to me at that point, and it had always been kind of in the back of my mind. Fast forward a couple years, Steve had mentioned to me that, hey, he has a friend that might be selling Americal Awning. The awning company kind of popped back into my head, and I said, well, I'm always willing to take a look at something. And once I met Scott and found out just how good of a guy he is, I should say, and what kind of business he built after he had purchased it. He actually started the camera ads and bought it from the original owner. So
which the Buck Owens group owns camera ads.
That's correct.
Now, right?
That's correct. And Scott had started camera ads.
Okay.
He bought Americal from its original owner. And after he was a brief conversation, he was wanting to retire. I said, this is kind of exactly what I'm kind of looking for, something that's still in Bakersfield, but in a different industry. The numbers made sense and everything kind of worked out that way. And I just took the leap and jumped in the middle of it.
So I'm an accounting nerd, as you know, and I know your family's CPA. At least I think I think you guys use Troy Marstill to do all this stuff. Did you guys involve Troy in that process, kind of looking at the business and helping with that?
No, actually, the accountant that we use there is Hubble.
Okay,
Tim Hubble. That's who Scott has used, and that's who we use at Poorhouse as well. And Tim, it was a very easy decision for us because the numbers seemed right. We looked at them 100 times over, and Tim was very courteous, and Scott was very courteous about opening the books to us and really showing us, how things had ran and the ups and downs and so on and so forth. And we felt that it was easy not to get into a business and not change everything on day one.
Sure.
And, Tim was running everything proper and running everything smoothly. We said, why not we don't want to take on that headache just yet of switching things out. Let's just see how it works. And Tim's been fantastic.
Good.
How long ago was that?
June.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Pretty
wow.
quick.
Okay.
Very recent.
Okay. So you're recent. So what have you learned in that? And tell us about the business.
Yeah, I've learned a lot of things about the light duty construction and the awning business. And unlike the oil fields, it stops generally after 5 o'clock. The oil fields always keep going. And so
Right.
It's been kind of a strange thing for me. The phone doesn't ring usually after 5 o'clock. And so it's just kind of a nice thing, I suppose. But, Scott has had very, very little turnover in his company. He's had employees that have been there for 16 years, 14 years. And I think that's a testament to the kind of employer he was.
Yeah.
Right. For sure.
It's very awesome. And so getting in there and learning, knowing relatively nothing about the construction business, I'm getting trained on a daily basis from his employees. They're extremely talented, extremely smart. They're very knowledgeable about what they do. So the service that they provide is unmatched. And kind of like where I came from at San Joaquin Bit, no matter what the circumstances were, your employees and your personnel was showing up on site with a smile, making sure a customer was taken care of. And so we had the same, level of concern for each job that I had in my prior company that I was at. And so that kind of made it a nice transition. I will say that the learning process that I'm seeing now is very much so like the oil fields. The government's involved in every aspect of everything you do. Right. It doesn't matter if you're drilling an oil well or you're putting up a 10 by 10 awning in your backyard. They want to be involved and they want to know what's going on. They want a permit for it. And so that's kind of a challenging thing to kind of get around. It's more of an annoyance than anything, but nonetheless, Scott's still been there kind of walking me through, holding my hand, kind of getting everything off the ground. And it's been really a dream come true from that matter because, we've had different acquisitions over the years where people just, here's the keys and they disappear on you.
Right.
And so.
Are you saying you still have most of the same employees? Everything's still kind of going?
Everything's the same. Yeah. We haven't let, no one's left and we've added more employees and we want to keep it that way. I think this stuff is, while it's at the root of it's not a very complex thing to build, it does take a level of skill and training, to put these things together. And unfortunately, I'm in a position where I can't necessarily go out and train somebody because I'm still learning about them myself. Right. So it's very important for me to keep everybody where they're at and staying on. And they, after being there for 15, 16 years, they value this company like it's their own as well. And so they don't plan on going anywhere. And I want everybody to still maintain, that feeling as it goes on.
Yeah, sure. Give us a shameless plug and tell us a little bit about Americal Awning, that somebody that maybe doesn't know what you guys do. What all services do you provide? Yeah,
Americal Awning, we provide everything from backyard patio covers to commercial carports to shade structures at apartment buildings, parks, things of that nature, RV covers, window awnings, window coverings. We don't do canvas currently. We got rid of that business prior to purchasing. I should say Scott got rid of that side of the business. But anything that needs shade, we put a cover over it.
Do you do any solar on that with that?
Yeah, we do team up with different solar companies here in town, and we've essentially bid out our product alongside of theirs. And it's something that we're getting more heavily involved in. As you guys know, the solar companies are just popping up left and right. And in their solar loans, they're able to work in these coverings as well. So it kind of works hand in hand with one another. And realistically, the majority of, I guess you'd say, the solar companies here in town rely on people like us, and we rely on them. So it's kind of a good, it's a good trade-off.
Yeah, I figured. So one of my clients is solar, and I see they're trying to do a lot of projects like this. And
realistically, you need something like this, especially in a backyard situation. And you know how ugly solar can really be if it's not if it's not really hidden. It's not a very sexy looking piece of equipment sitting in the backyard. And so
for sure,
it's nice to be able to put something like this up so where you can have solar on top of it, kind of hidden away.
I read a quote that you made, and I want you to tell me how this applies at Marical, and maybe it doesn't yet, just because you haven't been there a long time. But your quote was, you said, "I wish someone would have told me that if you trust the process, don't cut corners, and let time take its time, your road to success will be a lot less stressful and way more fruitful." What did you mean by that? Tell me, expand on that, and how do you see that applying towards Marical?
Yeah, I think that especially for my generation, everything has to come right now. You turn on your phone, and if it takes more than half a second to load up, we want to throw it through a wall. And so, but I've got the great fortune to work with, the guys that have been in the oil fields for years and years and years, and their philosophy is a little bit different on that. And if you take your time and you literally don't cut corners, and you make sure that everything happens right and you do things right the first time, it will all work out for the better in the long run. And early on, trying to make up for time and trying to force things to happen, it's ended up, causing me to have to redo the work again.
Sure.
Generally having customers that have been upset or unsatisfied. And so I found out early on that that's just not the way to go about it. And so with Americal, that's kind of the beauty of what we do. Our employees are paid not by the job. They're paid hourly, and they're paid to make sure that the job is done right no matter what it takes. And so that philosophy really kind of ties into what we're doing over here, because we want it done right the first time. We don't want to have to go back, and we don't want to have warranty claims and things like that for poor craftsmanship. Our guys stay there until the job's done.
It turns a profitable job into an unprofitable job, right? And
right.
And then it hurts reputation at the same time.
I was going to say your reputation and your accountability goes completely out the window, and that's something that I want to make sure that is set in stone, because Scott and a previous owner have done that for this company for the last nearly 40 years. And the last thing I want to do is be the one guy that comes in and uproots all that hard work.
You see that so often, though. A new guy comes in, he thinks he knows what he's doing or knows better, and then everything starts to fall to shit.
Exactly. And I've talked to, the employees that we have are very willing to communicate, and they're very willing to call me and say, hey, what do you want us to do here? We got this issue. And truth be told, I always tell them, I really don't know yet, but what did you do the last time this happened? Right. Well, cool, do that. But we're learning all this stuff, and we're all learning together. And I think communication between your employees and your friends and your family is a huge thing that you have to do. And when communication breaks down, everything else kind of goes along with it. And so by us being willing to take the time, talk the situations through, I think it keeps us right at that top tier of servability.
I was going to ask you about decision making, and so it was kind of funny because you give me the perfect lead into that. So your family's been involved in a lot of different businesses around town, and I'd like to talk about that a little bit later. But is this your personal first kind of journey, and so you're the guy, and what's that been like for you? Yeah,
so I worked for San Joaquin Bit Service for 14 years. And while doing that, during the last slowdown in 2015, I had managed to take some time and got my real estate license, and was doing that as well. And when I came back to San Joaquin Bit, we had another couple other companies that we had at the time. We decided that we wanted to kind of take in different directions. And so my dad had me step in as their quote unquote COO, so to speak, and make sure that everything was kind of staying on course, and been put in a lot of those different positions. And so I think my dad had told me something a long time ago. I was taking some equipment to a drone rig, and it was kind of a technical situation. We were using some equipment that was kind of unproven, and I was a little nervous about that. And he's not necessarily always the one to give you the 100% full attention and time of day when you have a question for him, if you're his kid at least. So when I was talking with him, and he kind of cut me off, and he said, hey, if this goes completely south, are we going to have to shut the doors down? I said, no. He said, well, then just make a decision. And so after that, it really it kind of broadened my kind of spectrum on how I like to manage people and how I like to do things, because, when you're relied on, you have to make decisions, and they could be really quick. They could be, long drawn out processes, but I just want to be able to have my people make a decision and not make them fearful of doing that. And being put into these different positions at different companies and having to run those daily operations has kind of really prepped me for doing this in and of itself, because I got in on the ground floor and didn't necessarily know exactly what was going on, what exactly the process was, but I relied on the people that I work with, and had them essentially give me their answer and stick behind them. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. I have a client that just absolutely adore this guy, and he calls me, fairly frequently, and he will go, hey, I've got a situation, and I need some advice. And he makes me feel like I'm the only person in the world, right? Like I'm the, the president of the United States, and, and so it's like, you're making the call. What's funny about it is I learned recently that he does that with about 10 people on everything. Right.
Well, you want
That's perfect.
I think a lot of times we know the answer to the question, and we know how to get out of the situation, but we just want some rearing behind that,
and reinforcement.
Exactly.
Right.
And so I think you don't always get that, and you don't always get it in the way that you want to get it. But one of my other favorite quotes was, "Everybody's self-made, but only the successful will admit it." And I think that if I'm a person that's out there doing, making these decisions on a daily basis, at the end of it all, I'm the one responsible for the outcome and how it all kind of turns out. And luckily, I've got great employees that will have already got my back, and they'll say, hey, well, have you thought about it from this perspective? And I'm open-minded enough to be able to listen to them.
Decisiveness, I would say that's probably my favorite feature of any leader I've had, any boss I've had, was the decisiveness and the willingness to make a wrong decision and hear about it.
100%.
Yeah.
And we're not perfect. We're all going to make
just
a bad
make a decision.
It's exactly right.
It doesn't have to be perfect, but just right or something. But the key is we're going to make mistakes. But if you realize you made a mistake, then change the direction, right, and go the right direction as fast as you can.
If engineers were responsible for making sure cars got out on the road, there would never be a car on the road because it's not perfect every time. Sometimes you just have to make a decision and move on.
Yeah,
it's been interesting because I think through my career thus far, my decision process, the companies that I've been with and worked with, the styles of decisions I make at one would not work at another. And so I've had the good fortune to be able to see a lot of things and remove myself from the situation and look at it from all angles. And I think it's kind of prepped me for owning my own company and doing my own thing because I'm not set in my ways on anything in particular.
Sure.
I'm not super familiar with all of the businesses that you and your family have been in. Can you just kind of give a little bit of history as far as what the Peters family has touched?
Yeah. So starting back with my grandfather, he was a farm equipment broker. And once he got involved in that, he did very well. He worked for Heston Tractors, top salesman for Heston Tractors for over 40 years.
Wow.
Company-wide, it was sales were always kind of in our blood.
That's challenging. Absolutely. That says something.
Yeah, right. I mean, that's dedication. And my uncle's been insurance brokers, and then when it comes to my dad, we've been involved in numerous different drilling applications, from drill bits to directional drilling, as far as light towers, generators, and on down to American Sound Studios, which has been was now the Bakersfield Hall of Fame. Okay. Had that for a short period of time, and my dad, if for anybody that's listening that knows him, is a very extremely unhappy sitting still. So he has to keep moving. He has to keep doing stuff. He's got that entrepreneur mindset, and he likes building new things, and he likes getting involved in new stuff. It gets him excited. And so most recently we became involved in the Poorhouse, which is a bar here in Bakersfield, and it's turning out very well. And one of the big lessons that I've always taken from him is that he has surrounded himself by very good people that run his companies for him and are on his side and have his back always. I think that's what allows him to do what he does. If he was the one that had to be down at San Joaquin Bid every day, checking things in, checking things out, doing the book work, making sure the invoicing was done, none of this other stuff would have happened, and a lot of people in this town would have gone unemployed because he hadn't started these other companies. I'm thankful for him that he had the courage to let somebody else take the reins so that he can go out and start other companies.
Yeah, you have to do that to be able to scale, right? Whether it's the one company that you have, or whether it's 15 different companies.
Absolutely.
Right? So I want to change direction a little bit. Yeah. You made an interesting comment. You said you don't get a lot of phone calls after 5 o'clock anymore, right? Yeah. And so that makes your personal life a little different than it used to be when you were an oil field guy. But that allows you to focus on one of your personal passions, and that's the music side, right? 100%. So tell us about that.
Music has always kind of been a thing that always interested me even as a child. Growing up, I listened to everything you could think of, and got a guitar for Christmas one year, like most kids do. And, we're always raised around music, but I didn't really take a strong liking to it or learning how to play the guitar per se until I moved back to Arizona. And I was living in Arizona, and when you're growing up in the early teen years and you don't really have a lot of friends and you're trying to make your way in a new area, you're finding something to do. So I locked myself in a room and learned how to play guitar. And when I moved back to California, it was kind of something that not a lot of my friends or family here realized that I knew how to do it. Didn't realize that I learned it while I was gone. And a good buddy of mine, Cody Ballard, who was karaoke DJ of Kern County 2 years in a row back in 2008, 2009. And there was a restaurant called La Careuse Rouge in Bakersfield off White Lane, and he was DJing in there. And I went in there with my brother one time just to, kind of say hi. And Cody forced me up on stage to sing Poncho and Lefty with him. And I was nervous as all could be, and I went up there and I did it. And every time I'd show up again, he'd drag me up on stage to sing something. And those were my first experiences ever singing in public.
So you were literally the karaoke king. I was referenced, and that'd be me.
That's exactly right. That's how I was doing
about it.
Now that you think about it, yeah. And so it was kind of, which is funny you say that. That's actually Cody Ballard is who that line was written about.
That's my favorite song.
That's awesome. Thank you for that. As time kind of moved on, I had at that point trying to write a little bit and trying to figure out where my genre kind of fit into music. And then life got busy, and I just kind of stopped playing music until about 2017. And my little cousin Jake, who's now a guitarist in our band, he really urged me to get back out and start playing. Once I did, it really kind of hooked me. It was something that music has always been in the shadows of the things that I like to do, and I never really gave it its full attention. But once I finally decided that, you know what, I'm going to really stop all my other hobbies and things that I like to do and focus solely on this, the rewards have just been, unbelievable.
But it's wild to me to have, the career that you're developing started in 2017, basically, from a hobby as a kid.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
that's wild.
It just, and it's been off and on. And I think the one thing that the Peters family's kind of, I would say, maybe known for is we don't do things half-ass. We get in and we go full throttle at something. And once I did, it really made a difference as far as the outcome of it.
What's the goal?
The goal is hard to say. I don't want to burn it out. I've burned a lot of things out, hobbies over the years, and they become not fun. And music is something that's been my happy place. Everything's kind of going to hell. I can kind of lean back on music. But now, with the success that I've had in it, now the goal is to head out on tour and go play for some bigger people and, hopefully get a publishing deal and start kind of expanding that way. What that takes is a whole nother realm of time that I wouldn't be able to give right now. So
right, that's what I'm wondering.
If it goes as planned and it goes well, I'm going to have somebody kind of step in and take the reins, scale up.
I read that you played over 200 shows in the last 2 years, something to that effect.
Yeah, and that was kind of we played a show just recently up in Visalia, and one of the headliners had said, thank you guys so much for, being out here tonight. This is our first show since late 2019, and, COVID had really stopped the shows for him, and cousin and I kind of looked at each other and kind of raised an eyebrow because over COVID we played 150 shows.
Really?
Wow.
And we played everything from backyards to front yards. We had drive-through concerts on curbs. People would just drive by and see us. And, states that were lax on regulations, Arizona being for one of them, or Northern California, we went everywhere. And because of doing that, we constantly had a presence. And then once venues started opening back up, it was, hey, remember these guys? They came and played for us when no one else would. And then we started getting calls. And so this year, it went from, last year playing in front of 10, 15 people in a backyard. We just played one for 4,500 the other day, opening for some, bigger names. And so it's been really a good learning curve as far as how to really scale up something so quickly.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Like they say, if you want to be an overnight success, you got to work over the course of the night. And that's exactly what we do. And we play constantly. We're writing constantly. We're on the phone constantly trying to book stuff.
That's what I wanted to ask. Are all of your songs written by you? You and a partner?
This new project, no. I've cut up some other people's songs on this last one. But what the project that I first released, what it did was gave me something to take to somebody so that they could see that I had the ability to write, And that's kind of what, if there was anybody listening about music and they wanted to do this, it's very important to learn to write, and it's very important to learn how to play guitar. It doesn't have to be perfect, and it's not going to be perfect, but you have to be able to take something to somebody and say, look, this is what I'm at. This is what I can do. Help me from here. People don't give anybody any credit if they're not out there trying to make something happen. And that's exactly what, when I went to Nashville for the first time and met some people back there, I showed them some of my prior works, and they said, okay, we see that you're playing a lot, see that you're writing, see that you're being active on social medias. If this is the style of music that you like playing, I think we have some songs that I think you'd really like. Had I not had those things, they would have had no basis on telling me what kind of songs I'd like. And so once I started looking at some of their songs, it was like, oh, geez, these are way better than what I wrote. So they were kind enough to let me cut some of those. And, even then, for my first release, stream count wise, I think my biggest song had, 6,000 streams. This first song has over 90,000 streams.
Wow.
And so, but I say all that to say this, that all that stuff costs money. Unless you have someone financially backing you or a label, you got to do it out of your own pocket. You're your own bank. And so that's where my career with American Awning and my other businesses and my other things that I get involved with, they foot that bill. But in doing that, I don't really have to answer to anybody in the music industry. I say what I like, and I say what I don't like, and so it really allows me to be the creative person that I want to be.
You brought up social media and me in marketing. I think about that all the time. How has social media benefited, especially, if you think about it from 2007, 2010, when you were much younger and trying to figure this out, social media wasn't as bold as it is now. How has that affected you?
Social media has been a very big selling point for me. It's been a tough thing to navigate. As you know, there's new platforms like TikTok that I don't think anybody really knows the answer on how to operate that yet. I went from putting 2 or 3 videos on TikTok with maybe 100 followers I put one video on there and it shoots up to 1 million views and I have 20,000 followers instantly overnight.
Explain that to me. Say that differently.
Yeah.
So your first video on TikTok had
A couple, maybe 100 views, call it.
He went
Then
viral.
a few different videos I put on there, maybe 5 or 10 videos. And then one just goes to 1 million and I've got 20,000 followers overnight.
How can you explain that particular video did that? Something you did different in the video?
Well, I put one on shortly after that with the same style of content and it did 3,000 views.
It really takes influencers that see it and capture it and reshare it, and then it can flood it, go viral.
Right.
Yeah.
But it really depends on those other people.
And talking like I have a buddy of mine from Bakersfield, Tim Dobbs, who he's right?
The dancing
He's
cowboy.
a dancing cowboy, right? And I think he's got 1.8 million followers on TikTok. And we were talking about this, and how is that even possible? How does something go viral like that? And his explanation was very
He
interesting.
found his recipe. He shakes it and it
He
works.
did.
Yeah.
But even then, for him, going viral's a few million views, not going viral's a million.
Yeah.
And so, I was talking with him, it's almost like TikTok picks a video right about the time you think you're going to get off this thing. They make something happen for you so to keep you on it.
Yeah.
To keep content rolling.
It's like being successful at gambling every now and then. Right?
Exactly,
Keeps you coming.
100%.
It is like that. It actually is.
Or a great golf shot or something.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Well, now, so to pivot off of TikTok to looking at Instagram for me, I think my follower count on Instagram is right around 3,800 followers, but I'll have 2,000 views on a video. So my engagement is very high. Whereas I've got people that I know that have 11,000 followers and only 200 people like their videos. So they've purchased their followers, essentially. You take all those numbers and you go to a label or a publishing company, and they look at that sometimes before they even listen to your music or look at a picture of you or anything.
Sure.
What are your numbers? And they say, well, that's light, this is high, you need to get those both up. How do you do that? I'm sure Shannon has very good points on how to get that done.
We could talk all day long.
Yeah, right. And that's kind of the struggle where it is now. And that's, if I want to scale this up and make this happen, really do it, that's where it has to switch from the music to looking at that and becoming a business side of things. How do we make this happen? How do we make all this stuff grow?
What you're doing really good, though, the authenticity that you bring to it, your posts are engaging. I mean, especially the stories that you put out. They're entertaining, they're interesting, and then people resharing them over and over. I mean, I watch you all day long. I watch it all day long, and you have really good engagement.
Well, and
You're
that's,
right.
My hat's off to people from Bakersfield, and thank you guys so much, because every time we do post something, people from Bakersfield are always the first to share and always the first to comment and things like that. So, people from Bakersfield really have propped me up and got me to where I'm trying
Just
to go
keep putting the word Bakersfield in every song that you sing.
I'm telling you, realistically,
We
it
all
is.
get so excited.
It's an ode to Bakersfield around here, and it's it really is an interesting kind of an animal to try to tackle, because there's always something new in social media that you have to keep up with, and there's only so many hours in the day, and
it can be consuming and distracting.
Right. Well, and that's why they pay people to manage their profiles for them.
Yeah.
Like yourself, and you have people that know what they're doing can make this stuff a lot easier.
But I would say to anyone listening, though, you could take a marketing firm all day long to post your stuff and create stuff for you. But what you're winning on is the authenticity. I just keep saying that, but your personality going through it is perfect.
Well, and I appreciate that, and that's the kind of thing that I like in music, and I like in entertainers. I'd personally, if I'd rather see Garth Brooks do the song "The Dance" in a 50-person venue acoustically and tell a story behind that than in a stadium full of 60,000 people. It's more intimate, it's more personable, and you learn something about that artist. And so, and like I was telling Shannon before the show, there's a way to do that on stage, and it's from eye contact, it's from smiling back at people, it's those little tiny brief stories. And so when we go play places and I've got a set list, I do, whether I'm in the shower or driving up there, I'm thinking about what little story I'm going to tell between each song, how I'm going to transition from one thing to another, and that's just as important as the song sometimes, because it really does keep crowd engagement.
What's your favorite gig that you've played so far?
I'd honestly say there's probably got two. The Cole Swindell show at the Riverwalk, if anyone was there, that was pretty cool. That was like our first really big show where it was professional from the front to the back. A lot of this time we're dragging half junk equipment around, throwing it out of the back of SUVs and trying to piece stuff together and go play. And that one, and then I would say we did one at a buddy of mine's house in Arizona a while back that was super cool, because there was nothing that we could do wrong. There wasn't a story that we couldn't tell where you could have heard a pin drop there
Wow.
every time we wanted to tell a story, and just having that level of crowd engagement is really cool. You know, it's pretty awesome.
It wasn't just your mom.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, it's my mom, my aunt, and
They're dogs.
exactly. Very cool to be able to see that, and when you know that you have a crowd that's paying attention to what you're doing, and you know, having crowds that sing stuff back at you. You know, we played at one in Idaho recently, and a couple people in the front row, we started singing that song, That'd
No
Be
kidding.
Me.
Yeah.
And people were singing right along, and then they kind of had that look of looking at each other like, oh, this is that guy that's on our phone, you know, and so that's kind of cool. It kind of makes you realize that we're doing something correct. You know, that's another thing about this business at this level, when you're trying to really keep the pressure on, you have to be constantly releasing stuff. About every 8 weeks is the number that you look at. And so we're releasing another song on October 29th. You know, we just got done with one, and so it's just it keeps going. And so you hope that it takes you long enough to where you can recoup funds so you can record again, you know, next time around. And you hope that in those songs that you release, someone is going to come by and say, hey, we'll pick up the tab for the next one. You just keep doing what you're doing.
That's what I wanted to ask you. So with every song that comes out, as far as, you know, we don't buy CDs anymore. And I think I have a $9.99 Amazon account, and I've gotten all your music from there.
Yeah.
How do you make money? Maybe not at this level, but musicians in general.
I'll just do a kind of a broad spectrum over it. Now, let's just take a DistroKid is the company I use to set up all my distribution, and they put it on all these different platforms. Through that, I can set my profile up at, let's say, $1,000. They go out and collect money from all these different companies. Once they hit $1,000, they send you a check for it. Well, streaming services, Spotify, I think the number is 0.07 cents per stream that you get. You times that by 1 million, not bad, you know, but there's a lot of people you got to pay along the way. You know, this last session I did in Nashville, you pay the producer 25%, you pay your songwriters a percentage, and it all starts to go away. To go away. That 0.07 cents becomes really small after a while.
Is it every time a song streams? So if I listen to it 15 times on the way home, do you get like $2? I mean,
yeah. So it really depends on the length of the time it's streamed. I think some platforms are start to finish. I'd have to look into that. But you know, I've always kind of said, until I get to the point where I have to start worrying about how much checks are coming in the mail, I'll start really dialing in on which platforms are the ones to pay and just put them there. But they all do kind of vary. They have their own different setup, and so going through a distribution company really kind of takes that guesswork out for me. They've got people out there in different, you know, systems that are out checking streams and constantly collecting that money for you.
Nice.
And so,
yeah, one thing I heard recently, and I'm a guy that follows cryptocurrency for the record, and am fascinated with it and trying to understand where it goes. But maybe you guys have heard of what are called smart contracts, right? Yep. So the smart contract feature would allow a digital currency token to be attached to your song, and so that every time that your song is played, that money would go directly from, you know, it would go directly to you. So it doesn't have to be measured that way anymore. And so in effect would cut out a lot of those kind of middle producers, if you will, or kind of cut out some of that accounting department, right, to get rid of that. So pretty fascinating.
That's the beauty about the age that we live in. There's always something coming up that's going to be that next best thing. Having something that takes that guesswork out of it is something that would be super important for a person like myself, because we don't know everything that we need, you know, for a certain project that we're doing. You
don't know what you don't know.
That's
right?
exactly right. Yeah. And that's how I feel like a lot of people can get kind of railroaded by this type of procedure. And luckily, through, you know, my prior knowledge of reading contracts and reading through things, and when I get something I have to sign, I actually read through it. You know what I mean?
Right.
Not to say that I can do anything about it. I just at least know that I'm getting screwed.
right. Just aware of the fact.
That's exactly right. Yeah. That's a good thing about it. But
there's a song in there somewhere, by the
way. Oh boy, is there?
Right.
So it's very interesting because, you know, I always figured it coming to the table right now, I don't have anything I'm bringing to the table per se. Next time around, hopefully if songs do well, I get some more creative decisions on things, and I get to be able to say, hey, this is effectively, hopefully going to produce X, so maybe we do it this way, and maybe I get a bigger cut of it. Right now, I'm still kind of a puppy dog.
Right.
How does all of this affect your personal life?
Terribly.
Yeah, terribly.
Terribly. I don't get much time for much of anything else. So, you know, I work all day, and then I go to the gym and I play all night. And so for me, you know, I was with a gal for a while, and once her and I had split up, I said, you know, I'm going to take this time, if I made this decision, I'm going to take this time to go after my career, my passion, full-blooded and really just hammer on it. Looking back, it was for a good cause because we're blowing up on all fronts. And so that being said, I mean, I do have to personally check myself sometimes because you start going too hard and you start going too often and you kind of don't take care of certain things in your personal life, be it your health or personal relationships with the family. You don't get to see them all that much. And
the grass in the front yard, right?
That's exactly right. Exactly.
Right.
And so that's stuff that I have to be kind of aware of. And I do try to check myself on that because it is a hard thing to do. I can't remember the last time that I, ate at the house, and I can't remember the last time that I got to really sit down and sit on the couch and watch TV. It's funny, I tore my back up over this last weekend, and a couple of days I actually was forced to sit down on the couch and just relax for a second. I said, this is not that bad, but I wish I could do it without squinting in pain every 2 seconds, but and so it's not, I don't think honestly it's that healthy to work that hard. It's really not, and I think people do have to be aware of it. And where my struggle is just being present in a lot of situations. That's a hard thing to do. I've seen it, from my friends to my dad to people I know in music. I mean, they're not in the room when you're talking to them. It's the next place, it's the next spot they got to go, and you get stuck in that mode sometimes, and it's hard to kind of break free. So I feel like rather than making that a habit, just try to break it before it starts. So
at the end of the day, you have a lot going on, but I tell clients sometimes that, when they struggle and they don't have goals, I tell them to pretend that they're 80, so close your eyes and look back at your life and then fill in the blanks as to what you want that to look like, right? So when you're 80, what do you want this all to look like, right? At the end of the day, what do you want to have accomplished?
As morbid as it sounds, I've always said that I want my funeral to be the most eclectic group of people you've ever seen, and I want to have had an impact on every group that I've had come and engaged with. I've from the rodeo world that I've been involved in to the music world to the business side of things. I want to just create an effect in whatever I'm involved in, and that includes my family as well. I don't think that leaving a legacy behind to your family is very important. I look at how when my dad when someone's asked, "Oh, hey, is your dad Brad?" I don't have to wonder, "Oh, really?
What does that mean?
Do you know him in a bad way or a good way?" I know that it's always going to be in a good way, and I think going out at, when you're 80 years old, it's the same thing with my grandpa, 92 years old when he passed, and you would never have met somebody that said he was a bad person or not a good man, and no matter what he was involved in. And I think that can be a challenge in today's day and age because you come into contact with so many people and things are so fast paced that people get the one idea about you and they keep on moving forward. But in reality, that's, I guess would be my main goal, is just to end up as a good man that lived a good life, that didn't screw people over. They, was an adventurer and made his way through all these different types of businesses and different hobbies and raised a good family.
With a diverse group of friends.
With a diverse group of friends, right, exactly.
Right.
Yeah, Thanksgiving's always going to be interesting around my house. You never know who's going to show up.
Right.
That's awesome.
That's perfect. So we when we close, we always ask kind of some different questions of people and to try to get a little bit of a different personal insight. And I always change them up a little bit from kind of the standard stuff that I get handed to Ken to ask, right? One of the questions I like to ask is, can you tell me about one of the most significant kind of life-changing events that happened to you?
Yeah, when I was, it's a pretty easy one for me, honestly. And I talked about this in bio that I'm going to be releasing pretty frequently on my website. It's I got in a horse accident when I was 18 years old. It really broke me up really bad. It broke my lower back and tore my thigh all to hell and cracked ribs. And it became a life-changing thing for me, knowing that things can be taken away really quickly. It was at that point that I kind of started turning up the speed on my life and doing the things that I really loved to do, and which at that point was rodeoing and team roping. And as the years went on, I became really good friends with a buddy of mine named Justin Pinsinger, who became my roping partner and then was unfortunately killed in a car accident right about the height of our roping careers.
Well.
And so within a few years of that, it came back, that it reassured me that things can go away really quickly. I don't ever want to be the ones caught sitting on my ass when the time comes around, and I don't want to, I want to live my life to the fullest because it can go pretty quick. Those are two life-changing events, I should say, that have had the same impact.
Yeah, slapped you in the face.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, get busy. So what is something that absolutely almost nobody knows about you that you would almost be ashamed or embarrassed to tell?
I'm really, really introverted. Yeah, I'm not a people person. I don't really talking to people, big, large crowds. I get social anxiety with the best of them.
So is that, and I would have never gotten that from you,
I
right?
know.
So that's just, you just are getting up for whatever the event is. You just got to show up.
And that's, everyone says, how do you do that in a big crowd like that? Well, for me, the crowd's 10, 15 feet away. I can control that distance. If I sit in a group with my back against the wall and, people are handing me stuff and talking at the same time and trying to ask me questions, it gets me. And, I got to take a step outside and catch my breath for a second. And,
right.
Yeah, so I'm pretty introverted, and only my closest friends kind of will know that.
Understand that.
Yeah, exactly.
That's interesting. You're going to have to hire security guards and things like that someday, right?
Exactly.
You're going to have some unruly fans in your
really
life.
keeping it out of the way.
Right. That's awesome. I hope that happens to you pretty soon. So, if you found out the world were ending in a year, how would you spend your time?
Not doing anything what I'm doing right now, just with my family. Uh-huh. I feel like I spent a lot of time doing other things in my life, and I think my shortcomings have been not spending enough time with my family. Definitely spend more time with my mom, and she lives back east. Don't get to see her nearly enough, and so I would definitely focus on the things that are actually truly more important, nothing that has to do with any sort of monetary gain.
We all get kind of caught up in that, right?
100%.
And it's happened too easy. So if somebody wanted to get a hold of you and understand more about you, and you're living two different lives, so we got to go through this twice, right? So first of all, tell us about Americal Awning. What's that website, and then how would they follow you there?
Yeah, AmericalAwning.com.
Okay.
And if anybody feels so inclined to, we're on 21st and Q Street downtown. We have a showroom there, and I'm there most days. And so anybody can come down and say hi and check out our showroom. We'd more than happy to have you down there. And our office number there is 661-328-1292.
Right. And Americal have an Instagram page and a Facebook page?
Yeah, Facebook page is just Americal Awning.
Okay.
Instagram page we do not have yet, but we will soon.
Okay, good. And then tell us about on the music side.
Music side of things, all of my music is at joepetersmusic.com. And from there, you can find links to all my social medias. You can find links to my YouTube, see my bio, see upcoming shows, things like that. TikTok and Instagram is at joepeters_music, but you'll have links through all that through my website.
Yeah, it's crazy. The TikTok blows my mind, and I'm not a huge social media guy, but I read an article the other day that said that amongst TikTok users, people that actually use it, they spend approximately 80 minutes a day watching videos.
Oh my gosh, really?
Yeah,
it's absolutely insane.
What?
I mean, you look
80
at
minutes.
The amount of content that is put up you can never stop scrolling. It's billions and billions of videos.
Yeah.
I mean, with a B.
It's crazy.
It's insane.
Yeah, so next time I interview for a job, I'm going to say, hey, do you use TikTok? And if they go, oh, I love it, then I'm not hiring.
Next.
Exactly right. Yeah, they're going to be a little busy on TikTok.
Right.
I mean, you can get stuck in that black hole. I mean, it does
sure.
happen. It keeps going. So,
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's going to be another platform that's going to pop up again sometime, and we got to relearn that one.
Yeah, something else to distract us, right? Joe's been fantastic today,
Thank
man.
you so
Great to have you in as a guest and learn about you. Really,
It's been an honor. Thank you very much for letting me share the platform with you guys. I
Yeah,
appreciate it.
thank
Thank you, Shannon.
This show has been brought to you by the Law Office of Kyle Jones, Troy Burden with the Lynn Company, CPA John Duffield, Scott Hansen, real estate lender, broker, and investor, and Eckroth, LLC, a sales and marketing agency. You've been listening to the Our 2 Cents podcast. Check out the show notes for links and more information about the show. Also visit our website at our2centspodcast.com or check us on Instagram at Our 2 Cents Podcast. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe.